Good morning. My name is Sharon Mejia, and I'm here for Art Among the Roses today, June 1st, 2013. Beautiful day. It's going to be warm. And one of the art pieces that I have brought to the show is a collage piece that I did from things I found out along the side of the road. And I just looked around, got some weeds and different kinds of other interesting little tidbits that I could find. And I took some of the green leaves and pounded them on some paper and distorted the paper and got it wet, put watercolor on it, and then I placed these after ripping them up on different areas in the painting, and then I used the end of my paintbrush and put some dots on there and just had a lot of fun making it, and it paid off for me. I won first place at the county fair in that division, and this is a beginning of something for me, so I'm really enjoying it.
Welcome to the Calaveras County Master Gardener's Demonstration Garden. The garden is here for the public to learn from and enjoy, and it's open once a month through most of the year. Today, however, is a special event. Today is Art Among the Roses, and the Master Gardeners and the Arts Council have gotten together to enjoy the garden and share what they do. So welcome to the Demonstration Garden and Art Among the Roses. This is Kate Culver, artist.
Well, hello, I'm here today showing my art, and this is a wonderful event. This is the second year we've done it, and I've always been pleased to have gardeners look at my art because frequently they like what I like. And so you can see I've painted something here I call this Tomato and Companions, where I like to paint things that gardeners relate to, and I have a garden myself. And so I chose this one to bring today, and I enjoyed painting these, and I kind of went out in the garden and looked around for inspiration because I love to be outdoors. So this is a series I've painted of grapes and grape leaves, and I just love the colors that this subject provides. I'm doing several shows that have to do with wineries, so I thought, well, maybe this is a good idea, but it's still something that I enjoy myself, this kind of subject matter. So I've done 5 of these, and then I got a little more creative with doing something not quite so realistic that I thought was fun. So I created this one. I call it Grateful Grape Leaf, like kind of the Grateful Dead look. I also wanted to mention that many of the artists here are going to participate in our artist studio tour. This is an event that the Calaveras County Arts Council puts on. I think it'll be about our 7th or 8th annual one. And actually, I think it says on here 7th. We've done it for 7 years. It'll be county-wide, where local artists will open their studios to the public. And the event is Saturday and Sunday, September 28th and 29th. And it's something that provides us artists a wonderful opportunity. To me, it's just so exciting. Somebody's coming up my driveway to look at my art. I mean, it's not like they're going to some other event where my art's on the side. No, they're coming to my studio. And so I am fortunate that at my studio I have space for other artists to join me that perhaps don't have a studio and work off the kitchen table. So it's a very nice event, and I would encourage people to want to save this date of late September, last weekend of September, and come and see all the local artists in Calaveras County. There are quite a few of us tucked here and there on the back roads. It's kind of fun to explore and see our county if you haven't done that before. Or if you are familiar with us, just come and refresh, of our art that we have to offer here. Actually, all these artists further on down here from me are participating in this event, and we're looking forward to doing that and kind of paint for it all winter, thinking that, that'll be our big event. Actually, so many art galleries have closed that having the studio tour is just wonderful for us.
Okay, I would like you to bring the garden into your studio. How does that happen?
Well, it just happens by being a gardener at heart and just loving nature. and get very inspired by that. So as an artist, I try to look with a different eye than what the public might have for seeing the shapes in nature and the colors, and pretty flowers and wildflowers, and just everywhere you look, if you look carefully, you see something that can be very inspirational. So frequently I'll go with my camera and I'll just wander around till something strikes me, take a picture, come back to my studio, perhaps redesign a few things, a few elements in the photo, work out a preliminary sketch, and then just set to work. And sometimes it doesn't turn out exactly like what I had in mind and takes on a life of its own. But I think these kind of pieces of art from the garden really bring a lot of joy and uplifting images to people to have in their homes and to enjoy, because sometimes people aren't always able to get out in nature and be in gardens nearly enough. I like that one.
This is Betty Merritt, Master Gardener.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So we're here today in our demonstration garden in San Andreas at the Government Center, and we're about to start Art Among the Roses. And this is an event that is now in our second year, and this year we're featuring our many heritage roses that are in the garden. And one of our master gardeners is a specialist with heritage roses, and she's going to be given a tour of those heritage roses and explaining their history, which is pretty fascinating. Many of them came with the pioneers that came to the county during the gold rush. So we're looking forward to having that presentation. And then, of course, we have about 10 artists from the Arts Council here today demonstrating their painting techniques. And it should be a wonderful day in the garden.
How did this event get started?
The event was just kind of a brainstormed idea that came up at one of our Master Gardener planning meetings. We wanted to do more events in the garden than just our one Saturday a month. We have one Saturday a month that the garden is open to the public, but we wanted to use the garden more than that, and we came up with the idea of using it with for special events, and combining it with the Arts Council was one of the first ideas that we came up with. So that's where it came from.
Sure. So nature in the gardens is very natural, and I do landscapes and flowers based on what I think are interesting designs. And so I love flowers, and you can see over here that I kind of did a close-up of a rose and a close-up of a woman interacting somehow with nature, and that's kind of a focus I'm going towards lately, is people interacting with their environment. So I do strict landscape studies, but I also am now moving more towards figurative work with the landscape. Well, these 4 paintings are actually pretty representative of what I do. So I do close-ups of florals, and I like a lot of flowers in a bunch, but I think it's more interesting to look at one aspect of the plant or the flower. And this one shows a close-up of the rose, and I concentrated on the colors and the lines of the petals and the leaves and making it a little bit more stylized looking. And then I also do just straight landscapes, and this is something that's local, and all of my landscapes are local. And so this is over at Lake Hogan. And I go there frequently for material for my paintings. And then this one is a mix of a landscape with just a little bit of architecture in it. And that's another type of genre that I do. And I like to add the architecture because it gives kind of a context to the painting as opposed to just a strict landscape. This gives a little bit of a contextual feel to it. You can imagine yourself by the river, going to the home, looking at the flowers, that kind of thing. And then this one is a mix of, as I said, my figurative work and my floral arrangement and the landscape. So it's 3 things kind of coming together in a way that I think is pleasing. And I like paintings of people doing things as opposed to just portraits of people. So this kind of helps me pull all of my ideas together.
Sketch it out. I use different colors. This time I'm just using blue because there's a lot of blue in the picture. I don't do too much detail, and I like a lot of bright colors, so I don't use pencil to sketch, I use my brush. I'm sketching the chair. And then I'll go back and fill in. And I'm not a real realistic painter. I like to put my own spin on things.
Now, do you work outside very often or usually in a studio?
Originally, I painted this one outside my studio door. I work outside, and I also, do a lot inside. In Arnold, there's a lot of times in the winter that you can't paint outside. So now I'll just go back, putting a little more paint on.
When did you start painting?
I've been painting since I was a little kid. And then there have been times when I've done three-dimensional artwork and like wall hangings in the 70s and early 80s.
And do you usually use watercolors? Do you have some other?
Actually, I do watercolor, acrylic, oil, and I like to do collage a lot. But today, because it's very warm here, I chose to bring the watercolor because even though you have to keep wetting it, it works better than doing acrylic.
This is Valerie Mergel, Master Gardener. So Valerie, tell us about this rose.
It's a Cecil Brunner, which is a very delicate pink blossom, and it repeat blooms, so you get blooming throughout the whole season. And there's several varieties. This one is a climber, and it will get 6 to 8 feet tall. They have a rambler version, and it will cover an entire house. And we also have a a shrub version. And this one here gets just a mounded shrub size of about 2 to 3 feet. So there's many, many varieties, but they're famous. They're an old-fashioned rose, and they have beautiful blooms, just cover the whole plant. And they're very delicate looking, so they're beautiful.
Would you talk again about watercolors and the speed and how that's...
Oh yeah, watercolors I like to paint fast. It's really a good idea because all the it looks real spontaneous. It doesn't get muddy. You just go in, you do it really quickly, you put the details in, and it's done. And I love bright colors. And I'm painting on Yupo paper, which is a real glossy plastic type of paper. So you have to have it flat unless you want the colors to run all over. And a lot of people don't like Yupo because to a certain degree you can't control it. I mean, you learn kind of to control it after a while, but in general your colors run a lot more than on a regular piece of paper. But I like it. You never know exactly how it's going to turn out. And I've learned to control it somewhat, but it's really fun. So I'm going to do yellow now over here. I'm painting these little flowers that are in a bowl on the chair. And I paint with a lot more paint than a lot of artists use. It's okay now. You can paint watercolor either transparent or solid. So here goes the bowl over the other. And so essentially this is a picture of my studio door with a chair outside and some flowers. And I use our garden a lot for inspiration because we have a big garden. So I take a lot of pictures so that I can use them later on in the year when the garden is asleep. So there we have the bowl in. And now my main thing, I'll just go through and make darker areas and lighter areas and just kind of finish up the details.
Well, thank you so much for coming to the Rose presentation. It's basically a new event here at the garden, Art Among the Roses. Last year we had art in the garden, but this year we're featuring the roses. We're very fortunate that one of our Calaveras Master Gardeners is Beth Pennington, and she is really our local expert on roses. There isn't anybody that knows anything more in the Calaveras Master Gardener group that knows more about roses than Bev. She is a co-author on one of the rose identification books. Right now she's working on an article for the Heritage Rose Foundation. And we're very excited.
I recently gave a talk to the Master Gardeners, and what I talked about there was more of the history of the roses and why we should care about them. In effect, what they've done in the history of mankind and really how old they are. And I will only briefly say we know for a fact they're over 35 million years and potentially could be as much as 150 million years old. So with that kind of history, there's a lot that's been gone into breeding by nature and by mankind. When I joined Master Gardeners shortly afterwards, I was asked if I'd be interested in going together with one of the locals in Calaveras County in search of a way to save the roses that were in the Altaville Cemetery rose setup. And there's, not rose, cemetery setup, and there's three cemeteries. You've got the Protestant, you've got the Catholic, you've got the Serbian, and then we discovered a fourth cemetery in Calaveras County that had roses growing in it, which is in Murphy's, and it's the Buena Vista Cemetery. And we started going around and looking at the growing conditions, what was surviving, what wasn't. We documented them. We actually produced a form of a walking tour so you could walk the cemetery, spot the rose, and read the history as we could define it. Some roses are lost to history with their names, but thank goodness we still have the wood that's there so we can make new roses. So as a result of that project, these are the roses that we collected here. This isn't all of them. There's almost 100. I think it's totaling about 97 that we documented, and some of them are repeats. One of the biggest repeats is Hermosa. We find that a lot, and that's a pink china. I don't have one here today to show you, but that's the one that seems to be most often planted. So when we finished with the cemetery project, we thought, gee, I wonder what else is out there. And the same lady, who was Rusty Roleri, said, I know some places we can go. And we started going into old home sites, old ranch sites. I mean, we even got chased by a bull one day. So we couldn't get over that fence fast enough. But we found a rose in the middle of that field and went back later when the bull wasn't around. Sometimes you just got to look. But we went through and we documented as we went, and sometimes roses are named for the site that we found them on. We have a rose here, and it's called Dr. Kelly, as in like Kelly Drugstore. He was a doctor in the late 18th century, and his grave site is over in the Altaville Protestant Cemetery. And we almost didn't find him. There was a viburnum just eating the grave marker. And one day, sticking out of the top was this beautiful rose, couldn't figure out what it was, went to dig for it, and before we knew it, we'd cleared enough of the viburnum to find out the rose had been planted in front of the grave marker, and what we were seeing was now rootstock that had moved in and over and behind the grave marker, which is quite large. And we took those cuttings and we grew them out. And the plant's over there. It's very prolific. We have identified it as Paul Neron. The reason they're that big is because it's one of the earliest hybrid perpetuals that was ever introduced. And with a hybrid perpetual, you're going to get a different kind of growth. If you buy Paul Neron today from a hybridizer, you're going to get old wood, and your blooms are going to be about this big. When we found Dr. Kelly, it was really encouraging because it not only told the story about something here in Calaveras County with Kelly's drugstore, but we also had a bloom that we now find is very old wood, very healthy wood, and produces wonderful roses. And the reason it was able to sucker underneath that stone was because it was on its own roots, which is the only way that I propagate. If I propagate, it's going to be on its own roots because it's going to be a healthier bush. Why do they do it in commerce with the budding? They do it because they have to do a lot of them to make money. And that's just the way the industry is. It takes almost 5 years from the time that they actually do a cross where they use a seed parent and a pollen parent and get their cross and grow out. All of those seeds in a rose hip are like brothers and sisters. They're not going to be alike. So you have to grow them all out to see which ones you want to cut out and which ones you want to keep. And that's almost a 5-year process. And at one time I was told there were 5,000 roses produced to get the one rose that they were going to put into commerce. And it took 3 more years to get enough wood to put it into commerce. So it's quite an investment. So when you buy them, if you buy hybrid teas, most of them are all budded. It's rare that you find on your own roots, but they do have them for sale now. They're starting to catch on that this is a better way to do it. And I pointed this out when I talked the other day to the master gardeners. My house has got about 175 roses planted on it. If a fire comes through, as long as they don't cook the roots, all of my roses are going to come back. So I'm not going to lose the rose because of what happens on the top. So the rootstock will bring it back because it's the same rose. When we do our rose, we call it rose wrestling. When we go out to do rose wrestling, we're looking for that hasn't been seen or doesn't ring a bell with us. We're not looking for the same plant. Like I mentioned, Hermosa is very common. We don't need a variation of Hermosa 15 or 16 times. We only need it once, unless it's something that's different about the plant. Maybe there was a natural cross with it. But when you go out and you look at these roses and you start to see the variations and you say, gosh, that doesn't look like anything I've seen. We want to propagate it, grow it out. We have a lot of people that we work with on rose identification. And the old Sacramento Cemetery on Broadway in downtown Sacramento holds a celebration every April. And they have acres that are planted with old and rescued roses. And it's a depository. It's one of the locations in California. There's another one that's in San Jose, and that's a depository, meaning they are looking for roses that are not now in commerce. They've been lost to commerce. We want to get them back out there. We also want to identify them. This garden is also a depository. The garden roses that we have here are all found in or around Calaveras County. There's one that was found in, trying to think, I think it was Columbia. And it was just too good to pass up. So when you find something like that, you want to put it in someplace where it's going to be saved. So every time we sell a rose here, we're hoping that it gets a life somewhere else and maybe it'll get shared as well. Shakespeare is talking about a rose in one of his plays, and I don't remember which one, but it talks about eglantine. Eglantine grows, it's the sweetbriar in England, and I don't know who it was, but somebody or somebody's brought the seeds over to California with the 49ers. And you will find eglantine growing all over the hills. And it's not a native, but it has been very happy here. So if you see a single, pretty lax kind of a rambler shape along the road in the ditches growing is probably eglantine. Another rose that's very popular in California that we see is called Russelliana. Russelliana is also called the Spanish rose, and it's also called the mission rose because when the Spanish opened the missions in California, the rose went with it. And those roses have been in commerce for a long time. When we went into the cemetery to look for roses, one of the things we wanted to do was to look at some of the history that we have. And trying to tag some of these roses, they are on grave sites that are unmarked. So what we do is we take the next grave site closest to it. And I just happen to have a picture of this rose. And his name is Tyler Carl. Tyler Carl is a little boy. He has a beautiful little, yeah. And he's very charming. His picture is there. And you can tell that his gravesite is still visited regularly because there's toys on it. So when we get to the cemetery, we tend to call the rose by like I said, the nearest grave marker's name. So when I go to the cemetery, I'll say hi to Tyler and walk over and say hi, Ernie. Ernie is Ernest Johnson. And that rose got so popular when we introduced it, it ended up on a rooftop in New York City. Yeah. And we're trying to get that one into commerce, but we have to have a breeder that's willing to do it. I'm going to pass this one around too. This is Irish Elegance. We just identified it. But when we were first told about it, we was told that it is not Dainty Bess. It looks like Dainty Bess, but it's not Dainty Bess. And so that's how we had it for years, is not Dainty Bess. It's Irish Elegance. It's a reasonably modern rose, and it's bred, I think it was in 1906. And it's very charming. The thing about this rose is its leaves are extremely thick. And I want to tell you about all of these I'm passing around. We don't prune them. We clean out deadwood. We don't spray them.
I've just finished putting the final touches on my painting. I took some colors off in places and because I felt it was too busy and I wanted some different highlights. So I changed some areas and then I've been going back putting little white highlights in and little dark highlights. So my painting is essentially all finished. It doesn't look like the other one, but no two ever look alike. I don't want them to look alike. So.